Well, the poet I'm going to talk about isn't dead. Not yet. But I was told it's all right to talk about a poet who's not dead. So I'm going to talk about a living poet who's actually coming to Ottawa on October 22nd. A poet I'm exceedingly fond of. Of course, who else would we choose to talk about if we have an opportunity to talk about, except someone we want to read and share. This is Patrick Lane I'm talking about, who I had the wonderful opportunity to study with for many years. And I wanted to just share a little of my experience of Patrick, not just as a poet, but as a man writing out of his experience of life. You know, as a man who left high school and never went on to education in any other form, and became Governor General, award-winning poet, and taught at university, etc. And an extraordinarily learned man, a man who taught himself by reading so deeply. After having written as a young man, starting in his early 20s, creating a chapbook, a publishing house with one of our own, actually. I don't know if you know Seymour Main from Ottawa, and Bill Bissett, and publishing in that environment because he had to, felt so compelled to. He was then picked up by Oxford, and in '78 that was the book that won the Governor General's Award. It was his selected poems. I want to read one of his very early poems to you. Here, I remember him recounting how this poem came about. He was a terrible drinker and quite addicted to a number of things throughout his life until the 2000s, when he went completely clean, and has only recently just broken the cigarette smoking habit, which I congratulate him for hugely. And this one, he'd been drinking all night, and he came downstairs and said to Seymour, you know, that dead bird that we saw yesterday or last night or whatever, he said, you know, birds don't understand windows. They never did. And that propelled him to write this poem. Someone's nodding. Isn't this lovely? I'm so glad you're resonating with this. The poem is called For 10 Years. Tonight the moon slants cold into the snow. Ice shudders on the glass, and suddenly alone I am aware of windows. Was it you who told me you were gone? Beyond the snow, light rides thin as a broken bow, without a hand to guide it. From this hour, darkness comes shrill as a dying bird. One night in the north, you lay in my arms and wept for a crying bird. In the morning, you found him dead on the windowsill. His beak was a crust of ice that melted as you breathed. When I threw him away, he didn't fly. That country of snow we lived in was a cushion for owls to walk on. Birds don't understand windows. They never did. He writes, I find, out of a tremendous caring. If I were to trace a whole theme through everything he does, it's a deep caring of nature, and it's a deep caring of people, and it weaves its way in. I remember him saying, I don't know if it was one of the workshops you and I were in, Terry Ann, where he talked about a bicycle riding around and around and around, and I pondered that expression, that was an instruction to us as students, follow that bicycle, or be on that bicycle. And yet I think now I perhaps have a little closer understanding, and that is that it's this coming around and again as he brings the poet and the reading and the person in the poem and the receiver of the poem back over and over again to what he cares about. And I'd like to read two more poems. One of them is this poem that is where I fell in love with Patrick. And I remember sitting on the bus when I read it, and as I got to the end of it, I think I burst out in shock or something, and the person behind me, the hair stood up on the back of their head, and I think I shocked them too. And anyway, they sort of turned around and gave me an odd look, but perhaps it'll hit you this way as well. This is writing out of his youth. The coup is called Cougar. The cougar, before she falls from her high limb, holds for one moment the ponderosa pine, her back arched, her tail so still the forest stops. There are silences to learn, each one an invocation, the one that follows a father's rage at a child, a woman's rage at man, a child's tears you watch as if the sound was a language you must learn. But a cougar's falling? Nothing is so quiet. Even the wind stops to listen. Beetles, busy at death, lift up their jointed legs. Whiskey jacks slide quietly away, and ravens appear as if they had been made from the air. It is to watch a thing whose only gift is death give to herself, feeling the explosion in her heart, a thing she has made, and not the men below, and not the dogs as they watch her falling through the limbs and then erupting into sound, their hard mouths biting what is already dead. It is the boy on a horse, so old it will not run, a boy who watches, not understanding the men who, when she falls, shoot their rifles at the sun, as if with such an exultance, they could bring a darkness into the world. And the last poem I wanted to read you was one from his latest book, Witness. And this is a perfect example of that bicycle going round and round. It's called The Green Dress. In the green dress, separate, the floor retreating from her so that it seemed she was farther away than the others thought, around her white walls, severe, and the doors white, and a single high window, a photo on the wall of a horse's head, poorly taken, the light wrong, the background cluttered, things getting in the way, intruding, haphazard, and not the fault of things themselves, the fragments, old harness, a bale of hay, a man's shoulder, his shirt with part of a floral pattern showing, perhaps roses, and wrong. So the woman in the green dress, with her hands precisely on her knees, her face held up so that her throat is exposed, the lines of the muscles drawn, and her eyes not closed, but open, and staring at the door, through which the undertaker will soon appear, bearing in his hands the ashes of her son in a plain white box, and her waiting for that, the green dress, not a special one, not one she might wear every day, but a dress she nevertheless chose, and by such choice refused extremity, both simple and not, reaching into the dark and taking that dress from among the many dresses and saying, terrible, yes, this one will do. Thank you.